Hey guys, my name's Kat. I'm a freshman at Florida State, and this is my project for my writing about board games class. So today I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the relationship between board games and coffee shops. And now, if I ask most of you, is there a relationship between the two? Many people would say no, and this is perfectly understandable. Most of us don't go into a coffee shop expecting to play a board game. Usually we go into a coffee shop to drink coffee, or to study, or to meet with a friend. But all of these things actually correspond with board gaming quite well. Board gaming is, in fact, a way to hang out with your friends. It's a very social interaction. It's also a form of study. I know being in this class writing about board games, I realized just how similar learning a board game was to studying. Studying takes a lot of attentiveness. You really have to focus in and memorize it and rehearse it over and over. You're really practicing the material you're putting into your brain until your brain can recognize it. This is very similar to playing a board game. We've played probably 15 board games in this class, and I haven't won at any of them. I'm not a very good board gamer, but after playing about 3 or 4 times, you realize it's taking you this long to understand the rules, let alone to even prosper in the game. So really, it could take 5 or 6 times to make any attempts at actually winning the game. So really, board gaming is a lot harder than most people realize. Board gaming is very similar to studying, and that's why I feel the connection between the two is so strong. Who doesn't want to play a board game and drink coffee? Those are 2 of America's favorite things to do. Board gaming has always been popular amongst younger kids, right? That's what we do when we're young. We play board games. We play things like Monopoly, Candyland. You know, these are the things we do. But board game sales have actually increased in the past few years, and these aren't amongst kids. These are amongst people our age. These are amongst our generation and older. But this isn't a sudden spark in the game of life, you know? This is not suddenly we're interested in all these juvenile games we played as children. This is an interest in European-style games that they're coming out with now. These European-style games are a lot harder than any games we played as kids. They're very tactical and challenging. They're very fast-paced and strategic. You must work with someone else to fulfill your goal. When you think about it, the games we played as kids just weren't that interesting. Today, when somebody opens a board game, they expect a large challenge. They expect to travel across a mythical island or save the world. They're not expecting to just move their piece across the board and finish the game. European-style games are cool because they allow you to fulfill that need to work towards a goal with another person. These cooperative-style games are all about you and your partner working towards your goal to win the game. The great thing about a cooperative game is it requires multiple people. It can require you and a partner, or you and a few partners. It's not just you versus the game. This is a really great thing because it deflates the trauma for competitive souls who hate to lose. Board games allow players to put their problem-solving skills to the test, just as they do in real life. So the cool thing about these cooperative games is when you do manage to win together, you've done it as a unit. And that just feels good. You feel like you've achieved greatness with this other person, creating the bond of social interaction and fulfilling the need to work towards a specific goal with someone else. People crave this face-to-face interaction that they achieve when playing a board game with another person. So much so that business owners all over the world are beginning to open these places called board game cafes. These board game cafes are essentially coffee shops where you can play board games. Their goal is to fulfill the face-to-face social interaction that we crave, but is often not fulfilled by our job or school. A lot of us sit behind computer screens all day, whether it may be studying or working, whatever. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you had any interaction with a stranger that wasn't over social media? The answer, if ever, is probably years. In a world that's gone so cyber, board game cafes allow us to comfortably interact with a stranger. I say comfortably because a lot of us haven't had any social interaction beyond social media in a long time. So it can be awkward when you meet face to face with somebody that you don't know. You're not really sure what to say. We crave that social interaction with another person, but we just can't remember how to do it. Mary Flanagan, a professor of film and media studies at Dartmouth College, says board games structure social interaction in a really safe and helpful way. Face-to-face conversation is getting weirder and weirder. Board games help us get along and communicate. Like Flanagan said, board games allow very structured conversation. That's why these board game cafes are so successful. You don't have to worry about the questions you're going to ask or the answers you're going to give. Your conversation is structured around the board game you're playing. Most of your conversation is going to be about the next move you're going to make or how to win the game. Board games are all about having like-minded, shared experiences. We'd lost access to that, but places like board game cafes are opening this access back up. In this increasingly complex world, we're working with our friends, family, and sometimes even strangers towards a clear goal, and that's what makes board game cafes so cool. Board game cafes are structured for a diverse group of people. The Brooklyn Strategist opened in response to an owner saying there was a growing need for after-school activities. This particular board game cafe was open so that children could have something to do besides sports or art crafts after school let out. However, the majority of board game cafes are geared to a mix of adults and families during the day and usually shift more towards the adult crowd at night. Hangouts and student groups are constantly looking for places they can meet that stay open late, and people are always looking for alternatives to bars. Board game stores generally miss out on the opportunities to sell both food and drinks to their customers. This is where board game cafes come in and sweep you off your feet. Not only do they carry entire libraries full of board games, but they also have a full menu of both food and drinks for their customers. Some board game cafes have even broadened their menu beyond coffee and have started serving alcohol to their older, later crowd. What more could you ask for in a place to hang out? Personally, the coolest and most important thing about board game cafes is they're aimed for non-gamers. Many of the cafes have dedicated staff members that help the customers choose from the massive wall of board games. When you have a whole library, it can be hard finding one you want to play. The staff even helps you learn the rules of the game before you begin to play. This is important to me because I get very frustrated when I don't know the rules of a board game. And let's be honest, I don't know the rules of most board games. In my writing about board games class, I've had to have somebody explain the rules to me almost every single time, sometimes more than once, and sometimes I still don't understand. I played an entire game of Puerto Rico one time in class with no idea what I was doing. Needless to say, I lost, but this is why it's so important for somebody to take the time out of their day to explain the rules to me. In class, I felt bad. I didn't want to ask them, 3 times to teach me these rules. I didn't want to seem dumb. So the fact that somebody is there on staff and it's their job to teach you the rules, that's very important to me before I get invested and dedicated to this game and then get frustrated and want to quit. Basically, these board game cafes are aimed beyond the typical gamer. These board game cafes aren't created for those gamers who spent countless hours and years in their basement playing Dungeons of Dragons or World of Warcraft. While I'm sure they would love these board game cafes, but they're designed for people like you and people like me, people who didn't play all these board games growing up, or people who haven't played board games in years. Board game cafes are taking off all over the world. They're going global. You can find them in places from Galveston, Texas, all the way to Beijing. In fact, North America's first board game cafe was founded in Toronto, Canada, called Snakes and Lattes. Pretty clever since it serves alcohol and stays open late. A popular board game cafe in America is called Uncommons. It has 2 locations in New York City. In fact, in its beginning stages, it went on a website called Kickstarter to raise money for its library of board games. If the number of people and business owners seeking funding on this website, Kickstarter, for these types of board game cafe establishments is any indication, then there will be a lot more board game cafes opening up in the near future. Give board gaming a try. Who knows? These cafes might be your new favorite coffee shop, or you might even meet your best friend or spouse. And who knows, board gaming could become your favorite hobby. Thanks for tuning in to my presentation about the relationship between board games and coffee shops. Hopefully I got you guys thinking about board games and wanting to go out and play. Hey, I might even see you at a board game cafe. Thanks again. My name was Kat.